I ask for the truth on behalf of Tara Brown concerning relationship issues, and ask for guidance and insight in the name of truth, right conduct, peace, love and non-violence. Blessed be to the truth always. Where the deck splits is where it's thought or believed to be at its strongest point. So we'll just move it to the side there. I'm going to deal out 3 cards here. The first card we deal is in the 3 card spread. The first position, as you could call it, is the position of the recent past. That's a period of time between now and this time last month. I suppose you could say between now and the last new moon, as you would say. And of course you asked about relationships, or your relationship situation, circumstance, predicament, whatever you want to call it there. That the meaning or the interpretation of that card will vibrate with your relationship. So it'll give some insight into that. And then of course the next one vibrates with the energy of the present, so your relationship right now, or your relationship situation right now. And then the circumstance in the immediate future, or predicament, as we'd say, whatever, is vibrating there in the immediate future. That's of course a bit like the recent past, but in this case it's the other way around. It's between now and the next new moon, isn't it? Because the new moon now is near as damn it, isn't it? That is to swearing. So there you go. We've got this layout here. Simple past, present, future. Bit like a timeline on Facebook, isn't it? I suppose. So we just I'll just try and neaten the rest of the deck. With this being a new deck, it seems to have a mind of its own, of slipping and sliding and changing shape. So you just have to try and just pop it up. It seems if it goes there okay, doesn't it? It seems as if it communicates with gravity or anything there. And the more I fiddle with it, of course, the more it will do something else. It shouldn't. Well, let's pull out the card that should be doing something, which is the cards we asked on your behalf. So all words are true, and we asked on your behalf, so that the cards that come out are vibrating. Their energy vibrates. The first one, of course, is the recent past. I suppose you could say it's about a bit like establishing the situation, isn't it? About like the long shot of a film where at the beginning of any scene you have a long shot which establishes the establishing shot, as you'd call it. In this particular case, the establishing shot is in the form of this energy of the energy of death. There at the moment. This is a major arcana card, number 13, because in the tarot deck, as you know, there are two decks, aren't there? There's the first 22 major arcana, and then the minor arcana as well, the 56 minor arcana. The 22 major arcana, of course, is the first, but were the first, the esoteric tarot. They were the first that were established, weren't they? Excuse me. Hope I've not got a cold coming. I've put this on to eating up a bit. Hopefully that'll keep it away. But anyway, death, of course, is what? Death is that cat there looks on to the Death is a death of the old, not necessarily a bad thing. I sometimes think of it as the best card in the best card in the pack. The best card in the pack. I often think of it as. In the case of all good things come to an end, we know that, but all bad things do as well. This too shall pass. A bit like the ring that was inscribed for the emperor. This too shall pass, or this too will pass. Don't take the good times for granted, because nothing is permanent. But nevertheless, when the bad times come, it will pass, and then the good times will come again. Because you've got to know what the good is. You've got to know what the bad is to know what the good is, and vice versa. You've got to know what the good is to know what the bad is. Good and bad, of course, positive and negative, can't exist without each other. They need each other to exist. Existence and non-existence have to exist together. They can't exist. Can't do with each they can't. They're in being together, and this is the same thing with death and life, or birth and death and birth. You can't have one without the other, and you can't have life without death and birth. But you can't have life without death neither, because death is part of life. Is death the end of life? Is birth the beginning of life? Or is death life, and is birth, life and death all one thing, or the same thing? In this particular case, when it comes to relationships, death in this particular case often just simply means just end, sudden end, or the end of change. It means change, doesn't it? That's what it is. Change is the effect of an act of love. All acts of love are pure joy. Die daily. That's what Crowley says, isn't it? Knowing that, I'm just trying to look at the card really, although it's notice there's a clock here in the back. Is that a clock there, just indicating time or something? I don't know. It looks like a clock anyway, but I'm sort of getting time in that sense of a clock, as if there is a particular time on the clock when it strikes. I hope it's a clock anyway, but I'm sort of thinking of a clock in the sense of there's a particular time that you always remember. You know, we remember like when Grandma died or whatever, like we found Grandma dead at 11:30 in the morning when we broke in through the window. In my case it was anyway. But you always remember that. In this case, not just remembering, it was on the 8th of June, that was terrible. It was about 35 years ago though. But in this particular scenario with you, it's not so much the date that you remember, it's the time. There's always a particular time of the day that seems to be poignant to you, that seems to be memorable to you. The time when things changed, when your life changed for some reason or other, when things came to an end. Why I'm sort of thinking this now, relationships came to an end at 6 o'clock or whatever, just for the sake of saying a time, you know. And when that time, whatever time it is, just say 6 o'clock for example, when 6 o'clock comes, you always think of, oh God, it's 6 o'clock in the evening again. That's the time when he walked out, or that's the time when whatever. And it's this sort of thing. Why I'm sort of locking onto that, I don't know. but it's the time your life changed, not so much the day. If you could sort of think of it as a date, then you could at least leave it 12 months, couldn't you? But you don't want to do that. You want to focus on the time of day or something like that, and it's going through your mind all the time, literally. And that thing that's ended, why did it end? Maybe it ended because there was a beginning to it. Anything with a beginning has to have an end, otherwise you don't know it's begun, do you? And you don't know it's continuing throughout in the interim. And that's the sort of thing. Maybe that's the lesson. I don't know. Of course, the reaper in the death, in the traditional death, of course, as the scythe that clears things for barren land, although the land is barren and empty, nevertheless it makes a clear path for new things. Let's see though what's going on now, or what's happening now. The energy of the present is the, so it looks as though the Three of Cups. Crowley calls the Three of Cups the Lord of Abundance. In this particular case, of course, 2's company, 3's a crowd, but of course, nevertheless, we've got stars in the background, the green of the heart chakra. Of course, although the stars do sort of may mean something, in this particular case they don't. It's more the 3 cups, maybe 1 cup standing on top of another or whatever, balancing precariously. I'm getting here as though it's more, not so much 3 in a bed, but 2's company, 3 is a crowd, as if you've got too much of a good thing going on now that it's led to nothing. In a sort of diabolical sense where the search for perfection ends up, you end up with nothing. As you seek for perfection, you want better and better and better. Better ends up the enemy of good enough, and you end up with bugger all. In this particular case, you've got too much. Maybe there is abundance of emotion, but not substance as in physical substance, because that died out, that faded out, that ended just recently between now and the last new moon over the past 3 or 4 weeks or so. That ended. And at that particular time, again, whatever time that is, the clock strikes or whatever, the 6 o'clock news comes on or whatever it is, we're sort of getting this abundance of feeling. Cups is to do with the element of water. 3 is to do with the element of air. So suppose you could say the airy part of water, couldn't you? In this particular case, creative and transmissive powers of mental and moral qualities, as if you're trying to reason with yourself, as if you're trying to communicate with yourself about this and all the strong feelings that come to mind when you do, and all the emotions, and maybe the tears that may flow just now and again right now, or the tears that are flowing right now, maybe to do with just an abundance of emotion more than a sort of abundance of love or whatever. It's more of an abundance of emotion that you seem as if you're probably more fulfilled now than you were when you were in a relationship, in the sense, yes, you've got the memories and things like that, naturally, but it's just all the feelings that you did have, you maybe were bottled up, and it's taken this end for you to realise maybe what you've lost, or maybe what you've gained by losing it, what you've gained by becoming free, by what you've extricated yourself from, what you've freed yourself from it in some way, so you can move on. But nevertheless it hurts, doesn't it? I want to see, though, what the immediate future holds, in the sense of a period of time between now and this time next month, you could say, couldn't you? The Four of Wands. A strange way of depicting the Four of Wands there, isn't it? With books and pans and whatever. But in this particular case, I suppose it's knowledge and things like that. The Four of Wands, of course, is the Lord of completion. 4 is a square number, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Like 4 corners or whatever. 4 is a square number, so it's a squaring out. Wands is to do with the element of fire. So of course it's energy, isn't it? Fire is to do with the number 1, which is spiritual essence and fire. So you could say the watery part of fire. Well, what's the watery part? Well, 4, any number between 4 and 9 is to do with the element of water. It's linked to the element of water. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9, they are to do with the element of water. So you could say the watery part of fire. I suppose a bit like quenching the fire or something like that. In this particular case, the moral, the mental and moral qualities of spiritual essence. In a sense of, as if to get some completion, some closure, maybe it takes knowing what your standards are and knowing that, well, I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that sort of thing. Where knowing what my standards are, well, he wanted me to whatever, but I couldn't because I've got my standards and I've got me sort of pride or my decency or whatever, and I wasn't just prepared to just jump in bed with anybody or just get married just for the bloody sake of it, or move in with him or whatever. I've got my standards, sort of like got to sort of let one stage of the situation complete itself, come to some form of squaring out before then. But the only sort of squaring out that you're going to get now is that literally where you will be, I suppose, not analysing, but certainly bringing something to a closure, in the sense of work from your standards, from the standards and the knowledge that you've got from that and what you've learned so far. Well, as I say, I don't know my standards. I'm sorry, but there's just, I can't go that far. Yes, it's very sad that it's ended, but I just can't go that far. Not yet. I can go that far, but not now. I'd rather things just square out and communicate mental and moral qualities. Just communicate with the essence, the spiritual essence of it, the watery part of energy. Time of energy, isn't it? The water of fire is time of energy, or the spirits of the west, of the south. Time of energy. Giving, I suppose, energy time, or giving time to energy to let itself burn out, complete, come to some sort of squaring out before we move on to maybe the loss of the 5, the analysis of the 6, the weakness of the 7 prior to the challenge of it on the 8, and then the peak of magic at 9 before the 10 of the turnaround, before we start all over again. What the bloody hell was all that about? And this is the sort of situation that you're really in from a relationship point of view. We've got to bring something to a completion, something to a closure about this. Maybe a final word with him or whoever, the partner there, a final word with the partner. Look, the reason it's split is because, the reason I couldn't carry on is because it's very sad, I know, but maybe you know that, maybe you already have communicated that, and maybe that was part of it. But now, of course, the abundance of emotion, more abundance of emotion of what could have been, or what you sort of perceived could be now, if only. But it isn't if only, because it's happened, it's finished, and you've got to move on and now communicate some form of closure so you're able to move on. And then when you move on, tomorrow's sunrise will be the beginning of the rest of your life, won't it? But for now, these cards have spoken.